Black Twitter is essentially a cultural identity that has taken root within the social media website Twitter. Twitter's nature as a medium for quick, concise discourse lends itself to being used as a tool to publicize meaningful perspectives from anywhere and everywhere. If you don't know what Twitter is, Wikipedia defines it as an online news and social networking service where users post and interact with messages called tweets. This definition was surprising to me because in reality, it's just an extension of how we communicate personally with one another already. The news part of the definition came into play after it had become prolific enough to be used as a medium of choice for news outlets and eyewitnesses alike. Twitter is incredibly popular. In fact, it has over 330 million active users, and 16% of all people with internet access use Twitter. According to data collected by the Pew Research Center, Twitter is especially appealing to African Americans and urban residents. Black Americans comprise over 25% of Twitter's entire user base, despite being only about 14% of the United States population. Why is that? Feminista Jones speaks about Twitter's unique connection to Black American culture, presenting it as a sort of legacy to the alternative communication styles that Black Americans have needed to use since the days of slavery. She writes, African Americans have historically relied on alternative communication styles and underground means to connect and build networks. Centuries ago, newly captured African slaves were separated from those who spoke their native languages to discourage organized attempts at escape. For them, finding universal means of communication, like spirituals or work songs, became essential to their survival and that of future generations. We have often used grassroots communications to organize and mobilize efforts to achieve freedom and equality. Early hip-hop music often contained linguistically coded messages of empowerment, hope, and progress, while painting realistic pictures of poverty, crime, and racism in inner cities. The Ebonics debate was arguably rooted in the fear held by those who did not understand and could not speak African American vernacular English, and as such, felt threatened by the use of the language in classrooms and in the workplace. What Jones speaks about there is embedded very deep within American culture because it's embedded deep within media standards. There's a reason we don't see or hear many different cultures in our mass media despite the melting pot imagery our nation heralds as being a calling card. It is not because some cultures are better or more presentable than others. It is because the few who control the messengers perpetuate assimilation so that their products can reach the widest audience possible. Basically, Twitter has superseded that and has become a megaphone to a group of people who have historically gone unheard. In an article by Andre Brock titled From the Black Hand Side, Twitter as a Cultural Conversation, he writes, Twitter's discourse conventions, ubiquity, and social features encouraged increased Black participation, the most important feature being the hashtag. An article written by Donovan Ramsey goes into depth on the subject of hashtags, attributing the proliferation of outrage toward the killer of Mike Brown and Ferguson directly to them and Black Twitter. He states, this was the network largely responsible for focusing the nation's attention to the killing of Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri last August. Witnesses to Brown's killing broke the news via social media. Within moments, their accounts of what happened spread through the Twitter sphere with hashtags #Ferguson and #MikeBrown. Black Twitter's public element revolves around the hashtag, a user-created meta-discourse convention. The hashtag was intended to filter and organize multiple tweets on a particular topic. Originally made to be a curational feature, hashtags quickly evolved into an expressive modifier to contextualize the brusque, brief tweet. The hashtag's evolution, he argues, led to the discovery of Black Twitter. Black Twitter's hashtag domination of the trending topics allowed outsiders to view Black discourse that was, and still is, unconcerned with the mainstream gaze. When George Zimmerman was acquitted for the murder of Trayvon Martin, Twitter exploded. The popular discourse evolved from grief and rage over Trayvon's death to grief and rage over what many people view as a failure of the justice system. If you were among the hundreds of millions of people who used Twitter, it would have been impossible to hide from the wave of outrage directed squarely at the government of Florida. There were no pundits getting in the way of information, and no corporations skewing the message with ulterior motives. Any perspective or opinion regarding the matter that you wanted to express, you would need to do so with your very own voice. With nothing to hide behind, your words carry more weight. Paula Deen also experienced firsthand the power of the Black Twitter community. Once the news of the lawsuit against Paula Deen went public, she began getting dragged relentlessly by a large portion of the Twitter user base. The lawsuit against Deen was for creating a hostile work environment towards people of color. When this became public knowledge, Twitter expressed so much outrage that Deen held a televised apology in hopes of saving what remained of her endorsements and associations. What makes it so popular is our very human drive to talk. I get most of my news from Twitter simply because on any given day, I'm likely to open my phone before I turn on the television, if I even watch television that day. There are countless ways to go about doing this already on the internet. What separates Twitter from other social networking services is that the comment or the tweet, not profiles or networks, is the site's focal point. What makes Twitter different from things like forums and other social media sites is how Twitter's interface promotes a casual environment that almost encourages ideas to flow without filter. To recap, Twitter helps people with similar worldviews and social experiences to connect and mobilize. It's an easy way to start a conversation on real issues. It creates an extension of the real, live community whose views cannot be distorted through the reflection of mass media.